I'm Peter Block here at TCT in Washington, D.C., and with me is Ziad Ali from Columbia. Ziad has just finished reporting on the Ilumien trial, an interesting trial about intracoronary looking to see kind of stuff as to whether or not your stent is adequately deployed. So, Ziad, tell me what initiated all this and then tell me about the study.
Where somewhere around 3 years ago, St. Jude came to us at the Cardiovascular Research Foundation after identifying a problem, saying, we're doing everything right, the imaging has got superior resolution and sees everything, but we've got a smaller lumen. So we were in charge of trying to figure out why that was. And that's really what we did in the Ilumien Iii study. We performed a randomized trial comparing OCT, IVUS, and angiography-guided PCI, but we performed OCT according to a very specific stent sizing protocol where we used the external elastic lamina instead of the lumen. In summary, the reason we did that is because IVUS oversizes the vessel by about 10%, so it creates an artifactual gain. And for OCT to match that, we needed to move out to the external elastic lamina, and we used external elastic lamina, which is identified OCT in non-lipidemic areas of the artery, identifying the most normal segments.
Okay, so the short version here is you really wanted to pose everything properly and get that stent out to where it should be. So tell me about the results very shortly.
So for the primary endpoint, which was the minimal stent area assessed by OCT in the 3 randomized arms, OCT was non-inferior to IVUS, meeting the primary endpoint of the trial. OCT had a trend towards better minimal stent area than angiography, but didn't meet statistical criteria. However, OCT was superior in terms of its minimal stent expansion, mean stent expansion, identification of major dissections, major malapposition, and overall acute procedural success.
Okay, so let me ask you a question or make a statement, because one of the issues here about this trial is, of course, that it didn't have clinical outcomes, right? Your trial is about area outcomes more than anything else. So I assume that you would say, if I ask you, should everyone have an IVUS or OCT to make sure their stents are okay? Do you do this in every patient? And if not, why not?
I would say I use intravascular imaging in about 60% of my cases. And I use intravascular imaging whenever I think that the patient's risk of restenosis and target lesion failure is high. End-stage renal disease, diabetes, previous stent failure, bare metal stents, small arteries are all the place where I think imaging provides us the greatest advantage.
Okay, larger arteries are probably not so much of an issue, greater than 3.5 millimeters. So let me ask you one sort of physiological question. We know from 1,000 years ago that if you drive a stent way out to the external elastic membrane, you drive it through the media and you injure the vessel more, which is going to produce more proliferation, smooth muscle cells. Where do you achieve that balance of big enough to minimize restenosis, but not so small that you get a problem with the stent?
I think the key is to land the stent into the most normal part of the artery. And to do that, you really need to look from the artery from the inside out instead of the outside in. We specifically tried to ensure that we landed the stent into parts of the artery where we could identify greater than 180 degrees of external elastic lamina, the most normal segments.
Okay, so it looks like intravascular imaging is going to have its heyday in the future. It sounds like this trial tells you a lot about total area, intravascular area.
I'm excited to finish off with the comment that we have an upcoming multi-center global large-scale clinical outcome study coming, the Ilumien IV study.
You took the words right out of my mouth. That's what I was going to ask you next. So we look forward to seeing those clinical outcomes as to whether or not this clinically makes any sense, as well as area makes any sense. Thank you so much, Ziad.
Thanks.